a house, for example, without a COC. COC is these days commonly used as an abbreviation for Certificate of Compliance in respect of the electrical wiring in the house. Now, the answer to that question is an interesting one. There's a bit of a debate as to what the legal position is. We are in possession of an opinion of a former judge, which says that you can actually transfer, for example, a house without an electrical certificate. And the opinion also states that the intention of the legislation that is relevant is rather to deal with, for example, a factory. In that case, an electrical certificate would always have to be provided if there's a sale and transfer of a property with a factory. But the argument is that the intention was not for the legislation to apply to the transfer of a residential dwelling, in other words, a house used for residential purposes. So we advise our clients, if it's also not, for example, required by the bank, that they can actually decide whether they want to include that in the agreement or not as a seller and a purchaser. So you could, in the agreement, agree that the seller will not deliver a COC to the purchaser, and then he doesn't have to do it, and then those costs are saved. Obviously, as a purchaser, you might want to insist on that to make sure that the electrical wiring is indeed in order and safe. But once again, if the parties agree not to do a certificate, then in our opinion, that's actually okay. From an estate agent's point of view, I would, however, suggest that you, in your agreements as a standard clause, indeed cater for the electrical certificate. This is because a large portion of the sales, as you would know, are financed by the banks, and the banks in any event require such electrical certificates. So it actually makes it easier if the agreement indeed caters for the seller having at his cost to provide such an electrical certificate, so that the purchaser can deliver it to the bank, and so that the loan is then granted and the transaction can be proceeded with. Another question maybe in respect of electrical certificates that I could deal with is whether the relevant legislation also applies to electrical fences. Answer is yes, it does. So if it is a case where an electrical certificate needs to be provided by, for example, the seller, then the certificate would also have to cater for the electrical fence on the property.